Hi, it's Jared from Strong Roots Farm, and today we are talking baling hay, making hay, baling hay, mowing hay. We're going to go through all of it today. So we'll take you all the way through the basic steps. It's going to be a fairly basic video, but I'll show you enough to get you started. We'll start with a lush field of grass that looks like this. Then we will take our mower and we will lay it down, cut it, and make it look like this here until we dry it out enough that we can make it into quality forage that we will be round baling and then using this contraption to wrap our bales to be stored outside. I'll take you through all the basis piece of equipment. I don't have anything great. All of our equipment is small and older. We are a small farm, but I will take you through the basic equipment that you're gonna need to produce hay of some sort. I'll talk to you about timing, dates. I'll show you the grass. I'll show you it when it's ready to be baled. How do you test those things? We'll go through all of those timing things that are so critical when it comes to making quality hay. And then lastly, if you've ever asked the question, how much hay is this piece of property gonna produce? I'm gonna help you to figure that out. It's a very hard question without seeing your land. There's lots of ways to do this, but I'm gonna give you a broad spectrum view of how to determine that today by showing you our grass, what kind of hay it would make, and then show you how many round bales we get off of a section that we've individually measured just for you. Stick around, I wanna take you through it all. Welcome back, thanks for joining us. Glad to have you here during this. It is gonna be a speedy video as far as me jumping from thing to thing because I actually have to make this hay and we've had a very, very wet spring. It's been very hard to have 3, 4, 5 days in a row without rain where we can actually do this. We cut about half of our property last night. We mowed it down and we're gonna do the rest tonight. And then as we follow this, we'll continue to make this video. It will be over a 3 or 4 day period because that's how long it takes to make typical hay. So as we go through equipment first, I'll run through that and then we're gonna get on to mowing. But we have our mower here and our tractor. Tractor sizes for baling, unless you're buying mini sized equipment, most people are gonna need a 45 horse or more tractor. So most of this stuff, the balers, everything that you're gonna see requires about that much horsepower. You can go a little less with a square baler, but most mowers, depending on how big they are, unless you're using a sickle bar mower, requires at least that much horsepower, and that's a question I get all the time. So this is our mower that we're gonna be using. It's not actually mine, because I'll tell you about the special situation we're in, but it has 5 blades that you can see that spin here, and that's what's gonna cut it. It will lay down, it will go up hills and downhill, it rides along the ground, it mows it very nicely, and we have it set to cut between 3 and 4 inches. We don't want to scalp our ground and kill our grass, but we want to get as much of the hay as we can. So this is our mower, and then we have our John Deere 5045D. I believe this is a 48, 45 horsepower tractor. It is not front wheel assist, which I would like to have, but this is sufficient for this mower. I do recommend some sort of a canopy or a cab, especially if you have bad allergies like me. You can probably hear it in my voice. But these are the starting pieces of equipment. This is what we have to do first, is cut the hay. Next, after a period of time, which we'll get into as we look at that, depending on how you're wanting to bale your hay, whether it's wet and then you wrap it as haylage, what percentage of moisture you want to have in your bale, you let the hay sit for a few days. We're gonna let it sit for 24 to 48 hours because we are wrapping. We can bale a little wetter. And then we will rake. We will put all of the grass that we mowed into windrows so that we can bale, and we're gonna use this rake. This is an old school bar rake. That's what they call this. It's a New Holland 256. This is probably 20 years old. One thing I will show you, and what I like a bar rake for, is that it controls itself with these wheels. It's balanced in our field. Versus some of the V rakes or wheel rakes that you have, there's just more attention needed when you're raking that I don't feel comfortable putting my 14-year-old. Whereas this, it stays on the ground, it's not super wide, and he can just go to town. And he can stay raking faster than I can bale, and that's all I really need. If you're doing a bunch of land, this is not gonna do the job. It's not fast enough. But for a small farmer, this works great for us. One thing I wanna point out is this has a dolly. Has these 2 wheels in front. They all do not have this. What this allows you to do is pull it with something smaller. Like my buddy who's gonna use this, and this is actually his rake, he's gonna pull it with his razor. And so he does not have to have a tractor. A 4-wheel drive gator, a 4-wheeler, you can do it with that. or a smaller tractor that leaves less impact can rake. But that's the next step in the process, is to rake your hay in rows. Once we get it put into rows, we will then be baling it into round bales with our John Deere 375 baler. This baler is almost 30 years old, or probably over that now. It's a late 80s model. It is all manual, so it doesn't have a lot of monitors and electronics on it, which is why I bought this one. This is my baler. I wanted an old school baler that was a lot of mechanical stuff, not a lot of fancy electronics. That was my first rule when I was looking. Second thing, I wanted one hydraulic hookup. A lot of balers require 2 hydraulic ports for your tractors. This one only has one, and it has a lever to switch back from the string to the door. And that's the 2 parts of hydraulics that you're gonna have. You need something to put, a hydraulic system to put string or net wrap on your bale, and then you need another one to open up that rear door to let the bale out. This one has a diverter that you change with a string, so it only has to have one hydraulic hookup, and that's all my tractor has. Now this baler makes a 5x4 bale, okay? So it is gonna be 4 foot in diameter, the circle, and 5 foot deep. So it's a smaller baler. It's a smaller bale, and it's actually a twine tied bale, is what most people call it. You can use thistle string or nylon. There's all kinds of different rope and different strings that you can run through this type of a baler. This is not the biggest, nicest, fanciest baler, okay? It's an old school small farmer baler. If you're doing hundreds of acres, you would laugh at this. It will get the job done, and I only paid $4,000 for it. So it's gonna work very well for us. But these kind of balers do require significant horsepower, just like every round baler would. 45 is about your minimum. Whereas a square baler, you could go with a smaller tractor. Older tractors have larger frame and less horsepower. They work fine with square bales. But with a round baler, you're gonna need some horsepower. You're gonna need hydraulics. It has to have good PTO, has to have all these things, and you're pulling quite a bit of weight, so you wanna be stable. Think about that before you get into round baling. Lastly, we have my Eco Wrap 450A wrapper. Okay, so this is gonna put plastic, white, and I also have some green plastic all the way around the bales. This is an individual bale wrapper, so it doesn't wrap them in one long tube. It'll wrap each individual one, allowing me to set them in different locations wherever I want them. Why do we do this? So a few different things. One, we get a lot of rain, so this allows me to bale quicker. I don't have to get it down to 20% on my moisture level. I can bale a little quicker and shorten that cycle. It also helps because I work a job, so this takes a couple days out of that and allows me to make haylage and some different things, and it also lets me store that high quality nutrients in a fermented product. But the other thing a wrapper does is it saves your hay from waste. If you are storing hay outside, you will lose an average of 15 to 20% of that bale. If you have picky cattle or goats, especially horses can't do that, they will not eat that outer 2 to 4 inches after weather gets on it, even if you unroll it. If you unroll it, that waste will go out in your property, and it's not necessarily waste then, you're feeding it back to the ground, but it is a round portion of your round bale that you will lose. This wrap prevents that. 100% of that bale can now be foraged on when it comes time. The plastic costs money though. You are gonna add about $4.50 is about the average, somewhere between $4 and $5 per bale due to that plastic. It costs money. And you're gonna now have that waste. So it can be recycled, but most people don't. It's a trashed product, it's a wasted product, and it costs about $100 to $120 to wrap 20 bales, depending on where and what kind of plastic you get. Most people that have a bale wrapper have to have hydraulics on the front of their tractor that they're gonna lift these round bales with a squeeze. That is the preferred way to do it. But you can spear these bales one time on the day that you wrap. So if you wrap it, immediately spear it and move it, and then tape over. You patch that. There's special film tape. Some people use duct tape and say they can get away with it. I'd like your opinions if you've done that and it's worked, but I buy the special plastic tape to cover over that hole, but that bale does not move. It sits there until we're ready to feed, and it sits pop can style, meaning on its end with the flat spot down or up sitting around in a cylindrical fashion. That way the plastic holds the bale. If you put it round and that bale starts to settle, it can rip your plastic. If air gets inside the plastic, it will produce mold. So that's why we pay very close attention to taping everything up, putting enough plastic on, and how we stack them. We do this all for the savings and for the ability to ferment hay to shorten our time as we bale. All right, that's the basic equipment. There are a few other things, whether it be a bale spear on your 3-point or a tractor big enough to lift them with the round, with the front end on a round bale, whatever. There's some other little things, but that's the basic equipment. We're gonna go cut some hay. We're gonna go mow, as we would say. So let's go out and I wanna show you a few things about the grass as we go out to this patch that I look for with the grass. When to bale, when do I mow this grass down? When is it ready? And I will tell you, there's a lot of forgiveness here because there's so many different opinions. A lot of people have different opinions about when and why they mow, right? If you allow the crop, the hay, the grass to go to seed, it begins to lose nutrient density. It begins to lose some of its nutrients. But if you harvest it too early, before the seeds are ready, you don't reseed. You're essentially stealing all those seeds off and it stays in your hay, which is not a problem if you're gonna spread your manure back evenly across your farm, or you're gonna unroll your hay evenly across your farm if it stays on your land. But there's, you know, obviously some differing opinions of when you should be baling. I'm gonna show you what I look for. So for me, I would like to capture 10 to 30% of seed. So when 10 to 30% of what I want to be reseeded is ready to be seeded, ready to fall off the plants, that's when I think I'm ready. And what I use on my farm is this crimson clover right here. So what I have found on my farm is that crimson clover is about the middle of the ground maturity-wise of my plants. Some of my orchard grasses will mature a little later. Fescue will hold on to its seed. Some of this fescue, I don't really want this fescue seed to fall. Some of the fescue that's around here is still holding its seed, which is what I want, but my crimson clover is starting to turn. And so I look for 1/3, which this is just a little bit past that, if you can kind of tell. We're probably 50% of this plant, the crimson clover, the bud of it has started to turn brown. I'm looking for 10, 20, 25% of those to start turning brown. And when I grab a hold of them, the seeds will come off. And it's really evident when we start mowing, you'll see those seeds end up on top of that mower, which tells me some of them are falling. I want my crimson and my ladino clover and my orchard grass to reseed. And so that's what I look for. When they just barely start turning, I want the most nutrient-dense grass I can get, the highest protein level grass I can get to make great hay, but I also want to have a little bit of seed fall back down to continue to reseed my pastures year after year so I don't have to buy seed. Now you can see here, this doesn't look great. In fact, we're next to my barns. This is where we would sacrifice, typically what we call sacrifice, or some people would. We graze this in the winter and then they can go back into the barn. And so some of this is kind of chewed up. I will not be baling right through here where it looks bad. I'm gonna bale this lower section just to remove a little bit, probably only 1 or 2 round bales out here, just to get some of this out. And then I have a couple calves we're gonna let in here and kind of clean it up a little bit, eat it up, and then I'll come in and bush hog and feed half of this field back to itself just to better this ground here. And then we won't touch it again until winter, so that it's prime and ready and thick when we need to graze it during the winter time. It's a different little scenario for us for this field than most of our farm, just due to that fact that we want to graze here in the winter. January, I'll be grazing this. Now over here in this lot, we've already grazed, and you can kind of tell. I brought about 10 cows in here for 2 days. They grazed this little spot, and it's just so tight with the mower and the baler and all that. It's really not worth it, but it's really good grass in here. They will knock down that seed, they will eat what they want to eat, and we'll come back in, we'll bush hog this all down, and then once again, it will not get touched until winter. This is another winter grazing paddock, small paddock here for us next to the house. But just depends on what you want to do with your land, the scenario, when and why. Just trying to give you some of the reasons why we do the things we do. Do we choose to graze or bale half and bush hog down? what we do. All right, so we're gonna hop on the tractor here with the mower. We're gonna go out and start mowing. I'll do a quick little time lapse just to kind of show you the mowing, but nothing major here, right? We're gonna cut it all down and it's gonna sit for a few days. And I'm gonna go and show you the difference between what we cut right now versus what we cut yesterday, so you can kind of see a little bit of difference, what we're looking for and how we're choosing when we're ready to start raking. So let's get going. Okay, you may have noticed there in that clip, I was driving over the hay I'd already been on, going against the fence. And so there's a few different ways guys like to do this. Doesn't really matter, I don't think. But what I do, the first swipe, so my mower is on my right-hand side as I'm driving forward. I like to drive my tractor against the fence and mow basically this second pass here. So my very first pass is the second little pass here, second cut. And I drive over the grass that's against the fence. And then I do a few rows in, 4 or 5 rows in like you see here. And then I'll spin the tractor around and come the opposite way in a circle, cutting against the fence like I'm doing here, like you saw in that clip. So now I'm gonna catch that edge against the fence. And I do that because you have to drive over one pass. And what is against the fence to me is never the best. And if it gets trampled down, it's fine, it's against the fence. And I can never get super close because I'm a little conservative on how fast and how tight I want to go here. But we're gonna let the cows in here for one day. Once all this is baled and all taken and removed, we'll let them in this, what could be 10, 12 paddocks. We're gonna let them in here for one day and they will clean this up. You also might notice that I have a bump out there. That is where my automatic water is. So I don't wanna be around that hydrant. There's a well there in the ground that you turn the valve on and off and it's covered with a rock. I can mow right over it if I wanted to. I just choose to stay away from it. The cows are gonna clean that up. I'm not losing a whole lot. So that's some of the decisions I make. Same with trees. I don't get too close to trees. I leave 15 feet around a tree because I know I'm gonna put the cows in there one day, 2 days, maybe at the max. They're gonna clean all that up. They're gonna lay around that tree. There's not great hay around that tree anyways. So that's just some of the decisions I make as I'm mowing. So as we're stopped here for a second, I wanna show you the difference in the grass. And we'll go over here in a second and look at the foliage before we cut. But I want you to look at the cut product here as you see it. And so as we bend down and we pick up some, it's like you would expect in your lawn. It's real wet, it's moist, it doesn't crackle a lot. You know, my buds are still there. It's really nice hay. And it's wet though. It has a lot of moisture content in it. It has rained for weeks upon weeks. And to the fact that we couldn't mow, we're right on the edge of being too late, really, for me. So, and up there in that other field you saw, we were just a little bit past where I'd like to be. We got to play this weather game though. So it's wet grass. It rained on Friday night. Today is Monday. We cut on Sunday night after it rained on Friday night, 1.25 inches. This is what we mowed on Sunday night, which we typically don't like to work on Sundays. That's usually our Sabbath. But with the weather and dealing with farming, my ox was kind of in a ditch there. I just had to, it has to be cut. I have to get it done if I'm gonna feed animals in the winter. So this has had basically 24 hours to dry. You can hear it, hopefully. It's crinkling a little more. There's still a lot of green in there, especially underneath, but it's starting to dry. if I was gonna wet wrap or haylage, what they say, I could probably bale this tonight. It's had 24 hours. We've had good heat today. It's been dry. This field drains really well. We have really good organic matter, so it soaks up water really well. This is a dry field traditionally. So I probably could bale this, or I could wait till tomorrow night and be fine. If you're gonna square bale or you're gonna dry bale, you're not gonna wrap, you would let this wait until all of it was crispy, until you could turn it and it would all crunch, it would break. It wouldn't have any of that softness to it. You still couldn't smell the moisture in it. It's a lot of touch and feel that you can't get on camera. I'm just trying to show you the difference. And we will have some grass that will be completely dry that we're gonna bale that I'll get to show you a little later. But I wanna show you what the difference one day makes. Traditionally, people let hay lay for 2, if not 3 days around here. That's the traditional method. Let it lay till it's all dry. It's best to cut between 1 and 6 p.m. at night. And then you wanna not bale before noon. That's what we say, to let the dew go off, let it blow out. If you can bale 4 or 5 p.m. at night, that's usually the best time to get you the baling. What we used to do when I was a kid and we were square baling is we would unload in the morning until lunch or maybe 1 or 2 o'clock. And then we would bale in the evening and fill all the wagons back up. And then the next morning we would come back and unload all those wagons in the barn. And that's kind of the flip, the rotation that we made as a kid when I was square baling. So I said I marked this field off just for you, YouTube, and we stepped it out. It is exactly 3 acres, okay? So exactly 3 acres. I hope you can see how thick and lush this stuff is. It is heavy. I'm 6'4", and it's up past my belly button here on the fescue, but way down in here, it is thick, thick clover, orchard grass, fescue. There's plantain in there. There's multiple kinds of clovers. Some alfalfa is out in there. Multiple different species of grass in this field, and it is thick. So here's my question for you. How many round bales, how much hay will this 3 acres make? And that's what a lot of people want to know. The problem is that there's too many variables to give you a good information that you can use on your property other than weights. And so you can take a 1 yard by 1 yard section and cut it and weigh it and then multiply that, or a square foot. I usually like to do 10 square feet, something like that. Weigh it out, do the square footage of your acreage. You would figure out the weight, and then you would know my bales are about this weight, and that'll tell you how many round bales you'll get off that acreage. If you've never done that before, it's very hard to determine, because some round bales can be 800, some round bales can be 1200, depending on the quality and size of your baler. Now, all you veterans out there that you stuck around for this basic video, you saw my baler. It's a 5x4. It is a twine tied, which means it's not gonna be a super tight baler. It will make good 800-900 pound bales, but it will not be those 1,200-1,400 pound net wrap hefty duty 5x5s that I can get to buy sometimes. So out here, last time we baled this, we averaged 3.2 round bales per acre. We've had better grazing since the last time. The grass is better. I've seeded since last time, because we had bought this farm. We baled this farm the very first year. We bought it before the cows were here. Even though there were cattle here prior, it had a year without cattle on it. So this year, this grass is better, and I'm using a smaller baler. That was 5x5s, that was net wrapped. So with that 3 acres right here, and that same baler, I would estimate we would get about 12 bales, 4 of those 5x5s off of this 3 acres. I'm hoping that we get 15 to 16 with that 5x4. Now, I haven't done the math and I didn't sit down and crunch this out. This is just me looking at it and guessing, but go ahead in the comment section, tell me how many round bales do you think I'm gonna get off 3 acres, Southern Ohio, good lush grass with that old baler. All right, enough YouTube games. I gotta get back at it. We're gonna cut this, shot a few videos there. I'll get back with you when this is done, and it'll probably be evening time. I got this field and 2 other fields to cut tonight. But we're gonna roll on and get this done, see if we can't get that baler hooked up tonight, and we might even test it out on this other field. So I hope you can hear me over the tractor here, but I wanted to show you that. That is the seed that is coming off, that is going back into our field everywhere and reseeding. Completed with this 3 acres. Took me just over an hour, and that is with the videoing and stuff. So I probably could have got it done in an hour. You can do 3 to 3.5 acres an hour with this. They say it's a 7-footer, but it really cuts about 6 foot wide because of, you want to make sure you get everything there. Overall, I am very happy. This is the best field of hay I've ever cut. And I want to remind you here, if I didn't already mention it, zero fertilizer on this farm. We've been here almost 3 years now. It didn't have it for several years prior to us coming. I would say 7 to 10 years since the guy before us put fertilizer on this farm. So zero fertilizer, and where we baled, this 3 acres has already been grazed once this year. We are just at the beginning of June. I think we're at the second or third today. And we grazed this the end of March. So as we first came out into rotationally grazing, we grazed the entire farm pretty short all the way around one time before we started sticking to the areas that we wanted to bale and leaving them alone. So grazed once, and we're still gonna get this return with no fertilizer. So that is the power of rotational grazing and pasture management. Now overall, time will tell here what we actually get weight-wise and bale-wise from this land, in this 3 acres. I'm not 100% sure. I'm guessing just like I hope you guessed down below. This crop could be thicker, right? It could be better if you planted an annual with fertilize and perhaps a sorghum Sudan grass. Could you get more foliage off of 3 acres or 50 acres, whatever it would be? Yes, but this is pasture land that we're baling, so because we can't keep up with it right now. This spring flush, will we get more than one cut? Probably not. We're gonna come in and rotationally graze. It will sit for 60 to 90 days again. And then this will be part of our rotational grazing cycle. If we have a spot, if we'll go through, we'll graze the edges, and then we'll start grazing our normal stuff. If we find that we can leave another section in another area, not this area that we're grazing now, we can leave a section and get a fall cutting, we will, but that's not necessarily the plan. At that point, if I found myself getting fall cuttings, I would say that my stock density is a little too low. I could, add some more cows or add some more calves for beef or whatever we'd be doing here. But overall, super happy with how thick this stuff is. I don't know if you can tell, but it is, at times I thought I was gonna have to downshift. It was so thick. Very happy with the outcome, but time will tell with the quality and the amount of bales that we get off. We're gonna go get another field. That'll be it for this cutting here in this part. We'll get back with you when we get these other 2 fields cut. All right, now it is time to rake. So we've got our rake hooked up to our tractor. I like a hydrostat tractor for raking. It is convenient, but if you're doing a large field, it does get old on the foot if you don't have a cruise control setting, which this tractor does, so that's helpful. There's just a few little things on the rake, and so they all have adjustments. You can see the turn knobs up on the top of this one. You're gonna lower a bar rake down. V rakes are different. You're gonna have to learn the adjustments on your rake. But basically, I lower this down about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch off of the ground, those forks. Okay, I crank those down. I know that this is a 12 crank rake, which means that I have 12 full cranks to go from all the way up to all the way down where I wanna be, and then I set that. If you're leaving too much, you can lower it a little bit, you can play with it. You'll find as the dew starts to fall, if you're raking towards the evening, it'll be harder to pick up, and you just kind of have to mess with your rakes. Our rake is leaving a little bit of debris, and so I'm gonna try to work on that as we go. But there is some kind of thoughts about how to rake and rows. If you have a big fancy V rake, you're probably not even watching a basic video. But in the other ways, if you have a straight rake, so this just rakes one direction, you have to kind of count rows, and that's really the main thing with raking. So I tend, as the farmer, to do the outside first and then do my straight rows, which does affect how you mow if you want to think about it. So let's go into that, and that'll be really the only thing we have to do from raking, and then I'll show you a few shots of me raking. It's not a big deal, and then we'll get on to baling. So first off, you have to know what you're baling. If you're baling square bales, your windrow doesn't matter as much as far as evenness. Whereas a round baler, it's very important. You want a 4 foot wide to 4.5 foot wide windrow so that it goes up in and makes that round bale even. If not, if you have a skinnier windrow, like this is a little bit skinny, we're about 3.5 feet, then you have to kind of weave back and forth to make sure that bale builds evenly, which we'll talk about during baler settings. I encourage you to pay attention to that video. There's a lot of detail there. It's not just simply driving the baler through the field. So the determinations you have to make while raking are how many cut lines or rows. So each one of these that you see behind me is a pass with my cutter or mower. And so depending on how big you want your windrow, you select how many cuts. I would recommend starting at 5. That seems to be a pretty good, everywhere I go, people like 5 cuts. Put 5 into one windrow. Now, if the hay is thinner, we've grazed, this side of the farm is a little thinner than over there where you saw us cutting, I'm probably gonna go to 6, maybe even 7 windrows, 7 mow rows into one windrow. And what you'll do is you'll go on the outsides, working yourself in, moving everything into the center. Now that number, you'll learn over time with experience with your equipment. So if you know, okay, this field, the way it's cutting, the way it's looking, that thick field, I'm gonna do 5. This one from here on out, I'm gonna try 6. I might even go to 7. That helps to determine that and know that through experience so you know how many outer rings to go when you're mowing. So to explain that, as you saw in the video, we went the outer whole loop. We went in a circle. Okay, we go all the way around our field, farm, whatever you're doing, whatever you're mowing, and you're cutting, right? You're leaving these rows in circular loops around the outside. If you're gonna bale in 5, you want that to be in increments of 5 or 10, okay? So maybe even 6 for the first one, but that way you're raking the outer loop in 5. So you're gonna have this windrow here goes all the way around the outside like a track, and then these windrows will go straight. As you can see, I've got 2 done already. They'll go straight back and forth, and then you'll use this area to turn. So I will bale the outer ring first. It's just my preference, so I don't have to ever, accidentally drive through a windrow. And then the round bales will be here, and then I'll use the baler to go my straight rows next. If it's a very, very large field, I have seen some people do 2 laps on their outer ring. So if you have a 5 windrow rake to get one, or 5 cut row rake to get to 1 windrow for baling, they'll do 10 laps around the outside before they start their inner lines. Now that can be a little confusing if you've never done this before, and there's different theories on how to cut and how you do it. So to explain that, I went 5 loops around my farm, right? My 5 outer cuts. And I actually did 6 because my inner one was a little thin. But let's say I did the 5. Then I start only cutting this way, back and forth, okay? And you can go the outsides. If you have a really wide field, you can cut a swatch down the center of the field and then work yourself outward. So you would cut back and forth, going in a circle until the center path got really wide, and then you'll have a left and a right field essentially that you'll go on the outside loops, because you really don't want to drive over the grass that you're going to be baling more than you have to. So it is a little bit of a planned map of how you're going to cut, but I have found if you do 5 on the first try until you know how many cut lines you want in your rake around the outside, and then figure out how to go back and forth with your mower so that you get straight windrows, that tends to work best for me. So now I said this is a little thinner on this side, so I'm gonna bump it to 6. So you can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm going that way, and my rake will throw to my left. So I'm gonna come over to the 6th row, and I'm gonna take this row and flip it towards the center and then come back the outside. So I have to count my rows that will become 1 windrow. So that's all I'm really doing here. That's the only planning and figuring out I have to do. And once you do this once, this is very simple and you get the picture and you get the idea. So we're gonna do that. I'll shoot a few videos of that. No big deal. We're gonna rake all this up. there you have it. Our field is all raked up. I appreciate you watching. I want to break this into a two-part video now because the baler, there are some things on a baler. All balers are similar, and all balers will have a little bit of a different, feel to them in the way they gauge, whether you have a monitor. There's all kinds of different ways to read, but the functions are basically the same. And I want to spend some time explaining that in the next video so that there's not mistakes made by listening to me. I really just want to give you the info as a beginner and starting the farming and the baling your own hay like this. So we're going to end the video for tonight. We've got everything raked. We're going to start baling, and then we'll put that in our second video, but it'll actually be in the same day of my literal work. So thanks for watching. Hit that like and subscribe button. Down in the description will be that link to that second part if you don't see it in your feed. And if you're watching the second part, you can come back to this one. Obviously, save these for when it's time for you to do hay, and that way you can go back and watch these points. Appreciate everybody watching. Comment down below, and then as we go through other videos this summer, I will talk about the hay, and we'll get into that. And then the next video also has that wrapping, so don't miss that. We'll talk about some features of the wrapper and why we do that. I'll point those things out a little bit more as we go into that. Until next time, thanks for watching.